debate, although the point is that we were wanting to actually ask the public. I just want to make the point, we have, this has not been a great advert for democracy the last hour, in my view. We have joint working groups to make some recommendations, and then we all start off and ask questions again. We may as well not have a joint working group, it must be everybody on everything. At some stage or other, we have a joint working group to make some recommendations. There's nothing preventing you to go to the joint working groups, even if you're not a member of them. So we'll never get anything done. I have a couple of people who want to speak, and that will no doubt become dozens. Can I have a mover and a seconder, first of all? No one wants to move it after all that? Well, I'll move the bloody thing. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor, so at least we've got something to talk about. And I've got down Councillor Newman and Baker wishing to speak. No. Councillor Baker and the Deputy Mayor wishing.
Point of order, sorry, can we just clarify if we're going to vote in parts? Because I think there might be some different views on 13 and the other part.
Happy to take a vote on A, which is 1, 2, 3, and B. A is actually the recommendation of the working group, and B was the recommendation of the staff. So I'm happy. Is that okay, Chairperson of the working group? I think that's what you had in mind. So I'm happy to do that. That's fair enough. And it does respect the fact that you ran a working group. Righto. Councillor Baker, you've bided your time. And then Councillor Newman.
I just, firstly just acknowledge the work and the amount of work that Rose, Libby and the Warrigal have done on this. But I'm going to be voting against it, and I'm not voting against it because I do not want to take this out to the public. I just do not like what we are taking out to the public. And I've been consistent the whole way through that I think we have undercooked this. I was probably one of the people that Rose mentioned was someone wanting to look at this from a blank piece of paper. As she said, this has been in place. It was foisted upon the people of Auckland, this model, since 2010. And we have never looked at it in a meaningful way. All we're doing in this is tinkering. And we will not get, and Ken made some good points about how, you know, the issues that he has. My belief is we should be having a wider look. It's the same as the fairer funding. I reluctantly supported that because it was the best we were going to get, but I didn't agree with what we were doing because, again, we were just tinkering and we weren't having a meaningful look. I believe we owe it to the people of Auckland that we have a meaningful look, and I will go even further because, as has been evident today, as soon as we start looking at this sort of stuff, all we do is look at ourselves and look at our local boards. And so I don't think we should be doing this. I don't think we should be going out to the public because we are not doing enough and we are just tinkering. And so I'll be voting against everything that's on the screen because we need to give this far greater attention than we are.
Councillor Newman, please.
Actually, I didn't have my hand up to speak, but if you insist that I say something, it will be a first. I mean, I'm going to vote for A. It's the recommendations of the Joint Governance Working Party. I have to say to you, Your Worship, when this goes out, and I need to state to you that neither of my local boards and my wards support this. A couple of my local board members from Popkora are here, and they will be very disappointed, I'm sure, with my vote. I had indicated that I would support a consultation on it. The reason why I'll support a consultation on it is that I think it will reveal the deficiencies of the proposal. And I say that respectfully to the staff because the staff, I think, have entered into this process professionally and in good faith. But I think, Your Worship, B is very unhelpful, and I won't be voting on B at all because that's not what I understood from my interpretation of the discussion at the Joint Governance Working Party. And there was a real reticence about 13, but we were told, well, we need to look at it because, we've got to give some reflection to advice from council that we were receiving at the time. And I thought that we'd basically done that and discharged that exercise at the Joint Governance Working Party, which was mandated to look at this particular matter. So I don't support B, and if we're going to have a vote on B as separate, if I can just have my vote recorded against B. But, Your Worship, part of the issue has always been, for me, not so much the representation arrangements, it's been the funding model for the local... Yeah, I am struggling. I think that the issue around fear of funding has been the key for me, and I thought that we resolved that a couple of weeks ago. That, to me, is the big issue. And I come back to... I'm still struggling, yes, I am. So, if the matter is about organisational efficiency, and I'm told that I have to weigh that up equally to representation, well, that's a problem, because for me, local board representation arrangements need to focus on achieving the localism first. And so if I do express disappointment about some of the advice, actually, is that I think it does overplay the sort of the value for money cost savings arrangements that have been mooted in the report. But, Your Worship, I would hope, because I actually think that this is going to fail today, if it does fail, then it would be quite important for you to convene a joint meeting with the chairs of the local board and the governing body to reflect on how we ended up at a point where this matter is being discussed today, but we actually haven't heard from the local boards who I'm not sure if they were invited to come and speak to this item today, no, but we probably should. They were declined. Okay. Well, I'm not sure that was the right approach. Your Worship, we will almost certainly have to mend some fences after this, because whether or not this passes, our joint governance partners at the local boards will feel that this was a matter that is fundamental to their roles, but they were not adequately included as part of the consultation, as part of the debate for today. You have my support for A, but I think you should brace, because I'm not sure it will be enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. For a person who didn't have their hand up, that was a good effort.
Only foreshadowed.
Councillor Dalton, I think everyone's had a crack, wants to have another crack again, so that we for those people who are waiting around to see whether we're going to debate later in the day about the stadium, I think you should go and get a sleeping bag. At this rate, the stadium will be built before we've got there. Councillor Dalton.
Thank you. Glad I'm at home sitting on my sofa. Sorry I can't be there. I've been unwell. I have always been a supporter of having a look at the number of local boards that we have, and that was both in terms of efficiencies and of possible savings. But this is it's been a huge amount of work already, and thank you to Rose, Libby and Warwick and the team for all the work that they've done. But I just don't know that this is in a good place to take out to the residents. I always support going up for consultation, but I am not comfortable on this one. If the People's Panel can't understand it, then how on earth are a community going to understand it from the consultation form? I support the work continuing, but I think we need to look at a longer time frame for it. It's still, regardless of all of the work that's being done, it's still sounding a bit loose. To take it out to Aucklanders to see what they've got to say. In regard to political working groups, this will always happen. Whenever we have a political working group and it's a big topic, everyone is going to weigh in on it. So I think we actually need to look at our own use of time and decide if we're better getting things to the whole governing body instead of some of the working groups, because we're all getting old here. So I won't be supporting it going out today. I don't think it's in the right place. I do always will support efficiencies in whatever area it is, but I'm not comfortable to send it out today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and the efficiency of that. We'll move on to Councillor Filipina.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to acknowledge our staff that have put this together, but I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Baker in regards to the tinkering. We need more work done on this. I will not be supporting it going out for consultation. We have a precedent in regards to, and December the 14th is one precedent where we ended up agreeing to have all of the LTP go out for consultation, but then even before the process was finished, the ports lease was taken out. Here is, we need to now stop this from going out for consultation. It is not needed at this stage. The local boards in the Manukau ward have indicated to myself, and I have no doubt to Councillor Lotu fully, that this is not the way they want to go. They have spoken to their community. So I will be supporting the 12 local boards, 60% of the local boards, I will be supporting them, and to ensure that the status quo stays, which means it doesn't go out for consultation. Again, and also just want to acknowledge the work, Councillor Ferry, of yourself and Deputy Chair Member Handley in regards to the Joint Governance Working Party.
Thank you.
And I'll, Chair, I'll call it for a division on A. Kilda.
Okay, Councillor Ferry.
Thank you. And I did want to indicate that I've put up a foreshadowed amendment which I've sent through to Sandra. The idea being that if this fails, and it looks like it may, then we could look at putting questions into the representation review consultation, which we have to do anyway. That would be those higher level questions, and then that could result in a process to look to 2028, come up with a model. So I've put that up as a foreshadowed. If anybody would like to think about seconding it, but we'll get to that if this loses. So, as has been mentioned many times, I've chaired the process that came up with these recommendations, and I now find myself in a very odd position of not feeling comfortable voting for them. I spoke when I was still wearing my working party hat, chair hat, about the context of how these resolutions came about, the fact that it was actually a number of very close votes. A lot of it had been debated back and forth over many months. We've had early engagement, and I want to pick up on Andy's points about the fact that we haven't really considered what real change could be. We've only considered 15 and 13 around current boundaries because that was what was necessary to meet the 2025 timeframe. We very early on worked out that there just wasn't time for implementation for any model other than one that matched up with existing boundaries and amalgamated some boards, which is one of the reasons we had such trouble with FO. One of the other things we discussed was how since amalgamation, there were communities of interest that had kind of grown around their local board. And I live in one of those, Puketapapa. Nobody even knew the word. Well, obviously, mana whenua probably did, but it certainly wasn't used by the community 14 years ago. And now it's the name of a sports club, and it's commonly referred to by schools and kids who do their pepeha. And so it has actually become a community of interest, and I would argue that FO is in a similar situation too, that has become a community of interest, and to amalgamate either of them then with another part would not do justice to that community of interest. I was earlier comfortable that we ask the public on this and that we go out to consultation. I did in the Working Party vote against some of these recommendations but lost those. But I now come without that hat on. And I've reflected on the fact I've had calls from both of my local board chairs, which is very unusual. They don't usually call me. We have decent relationship. I'm not trying to imply anything there, but they don't usually pick up the phone and say, hey, we really want you to take a position on this. In fact, I think this is the first time they've done that. And they were both very concerned about this going out to consultation, considering it to be underbaked. And I've come to agree with that view. For me, something needs to meet a really high bar of not being cooked enough, if you like, for us to not put it out to consultation. The only other thing I think I've voted not to put out to consultation from this seat was the port lease. And for me, that didn't reach the bar. That was something that I thought we just shouldn't consider, we shouldn't do. And I've actually come to the view that at this one is more of a timing issue. At this time, this doesn't meet the bar either, that we would be creating a lot of angst, a lot of expectations, a lot of confusion, and not actually come up with something that we could usefully implement for 2025 anyway. So we might as well take our time and do it more effectively and aim to 2028. So I will be opposing A. I was really disappointed to see B back up there, but I've already covered that. But I will also oppose B. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Darby, please.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, look, as I've advocated to you, Mayor Wayne, and I advocated to former Mayor Phil Goff, and been rebuffed on both. You probably can't remember it, Mayor, but it was in our first sessions together. I favour taking a holistic approach on this, and I said this at the outset when so I'm only on repeat here, because it hasn't quite got through yet, but I think it is now. I favour that more holistic review, and that is the review of the 2009 Local Government Auckland Council Act, the legislation. This, in my eyes, is a bit of a DIY sort of renovation without, taking the helicopter view. And I see that as, it doesn't need to be a big, Royal Commission again or anything like that. It can be a soft review, a joint review between Auckland Council and government. That's what I advocated for with Mayor Phil and yourself. I have become aware that the Department of Internal Affairs in Auckland has often discussed that in-house and not quite got to the point of recommending to the Minister of Local Government twice now of setting aside $1 million, plus or minus I think it was, to undertake a soft review. Now, I think that is the course to go. We're now, 15 years? 15 years since Rodney Hyde put that legislation across the line in the previous National Act coalition. And I keep remembering what the Royal Commission said that in part informed that legislation. Of course, the recommendations weren't taken up by that government in full. And there were two systemic problems that were identified, and that was community engagement was poor and regional integration was lacking. They were the two systemic problems. I think regional integration is well ahead now, but it does concern me that we have fallen behind on community engagement. And I'm not just talking about the numbers of people who submit to an LTP, and it's great success there. I'm talking about that true community engagement through participatory democracy models and localism. And the key is localism. So we haven't seen the evidence of that, the success or otherwise of the 2009 legislation, because we haven't looked. We haven't looked at those 15 years. And that's what is required of us, my view. And that's for the benefit of not just Aucklanders and Auckland Council, but I think it's to the benefit of the government, because they are faced with the suggestion from some elected members in the Parliament that there should be other amalgamations and unified authorities. Personally, I think the merits, from my experience, outweigh the disbenefits, but there's work to be done within that model. So surely that's what we should be looking at. And as I say, localism and participatory democracy, that is the direction of travel. when you look at so-called local, boy, it has to be about 5 sets of inverted commas on each side of the L's, because I really struggle to see how a local board of 180, 190,000 people, which is about the size of Tauranga, is a board in local proximity to its people. I just don't, it doesn't stack up for me, so it's nowhere there. So I won't be supporting this. I would hope that, I don't think it's for today, I would hope that we can start to have a much bigger conversation, a really positive conversation about reviewing the legislation, amending the legislation from a really good evidence base and growing localism and democracy in Auckland, not just wrapping a bit of duct tape around it, as this is.
Okay, Councillor Simpson, this is a new record for a debate about something that's most unimportant, but still, who knows?
Thank you, Chair. I actually think it is very important. I am voting for everything today because I have a complete open mind. It's actually not what I think, and it's in some respects not what the local board elected members think. What we're voting on today is to ask the people of Auckland what they think. Whether they think the current model or a slightly less or a lot less from a local board number perspective is right for them. I absolutely, in supporting this, my next big worry is what that consultation material looks like. So I want to have that workshop and I want to have it with local board members, certainly with chairs, and I want to talk to my local board to make sure that the material that goes out to Aucklanders is what I believe to be fair and accurate, talking about the advantages and disadvantages. If I don't like the material and it gets to that point, I still have another vote. But right at this moment, I have the choice on whether to keep going down the path of asking Aucklanders how they feel they are represented at local board decision-making level with regards to numbers and numbers of local board members and areas. So from my perspective, Your Worship, I think my personal view is by saying no now, we're taking away that opportunity for Aucklanders, and I don't want to do that. I want to give them an opportunity. Now, you're a bit known for, Your Worship, throwing out some pretty interesting things that often winds people up and gets them to have their say. And I'm going back to that first budget on cultural stuff, and the second budget, the LTP budget, when you talked about the port, for example. What that does is it winds people up and gets them to have a say. And I potentially think that's what this is doing. So I want to see what Aucklanders have to say, and I'm not going to go to this with a closed mind. I am coming to this with an open mind and want to take it to the people of Auckland, so I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lee, what's on your mind?
Thank you. Of all the parties involved, the authors, if you like, created this council, probably the most credit should go for the best job to the Local Government Commission, who put together the wards and the local boards, and they did a good job, I believe. It wasn't easy, but what they came up with was robust and democratic, and it did work. And I'm afraid tinkering, I think you used that word, is what we are doing now, without the robustness that is required to make a good job of this, let alone the moral authority. If local boards are not happy with this, how credible is our consultation with the public, especially given our past record? So I agree with those members who consider that that this is underdone, that more work is required. Local boards, I believe, are important. If anything, they need to be powered up. not broken down, not downsized. Local boards are important in new communities. Auckland is growing. If the Local Government Commission considered 21 local boards was appropriate 14 years ago, if anything, we should be looking at more local boards if we're looking at local democracy, rather than some sweeping reform to say we've downsized the local boards, aren't we clever? No, not at all. I also object really to this B, especially when we talk about including the 13 local boards option on the basis of staff advice and analysis. Well, that's not perfect at all when they cite the Royal Commission as the authority for justifying 13 local boards. And I suspect as part of this consultation, you get a choice of 21 status quo, 13, or maybe 15. And hopefully the powers that be will want people to vote for 15. Well, they shouldn't. They should be trying to keep the status quo. And if anything, with local communities, a diverse Auckland, we should be looking at more local boards to build the culture, the localism and democracy in those new areas. What people want, I believe, from this council and the local boards is more accountability, not less. More democracy, not less. And that local means local, not sub-regional. Local doesn't mean remote. It really does mean local. And therefore, what we're doing here is moving away from that. And therefore, I can't agree with it. Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with Mr Baker. I think we should start from a clean slate. I don't think we're speaking to the public to hear their views. We're giving them a predetermined couple of things to choose from. And also, it was suggested to me to attend the working group. I did attend and then I was told I couldn't speak. Thank you. So I will not be supporting this.
Councillor Bartley, please. Come on.
Man, I wish I could switch off, eh? I definitely am not supporting this. I'm doodling so that I don't end up crying, because what could eventuate from this is just heartbreaking for my ward and my communities, who will be overrun by the wards that are proposed to join it. You will not get diversity. You will not get the first Tongan chair of a local board. You will not get the first Pasifika woman on the governing body of Auckland, which took 2018 to make that happen, and it was my ward that brought that in. You won't get a Cook Islander, you won't get 3 Māori on your local board with what's proposed from this. So I definitely don't support this. I don't see diversity happening in what's proposed. I just see a loss of voice, a loss of local voice. And that's what our community's bought into with this whole super city, subsidiarity, more power to local boards, more power to local voice, and I don't see that happening here. And I don't support any of it for the reasons that Andy raised as well, the undercooked, but absolutely don't support, because I can see what's going to come out of it. My local board did not support this going up for public consultation anyway, so I'm in line with them there. But I just see people say to me, oh, why should I vote? I don't see anybody there that looks like me. We've come a long way from that. We have faces that reflect Auckland, and to do something like this with what could come out of it, those faces are not going to reflect the whole of our population from what I see out of this, and I don't support any of it.
That's fairly clear. Can we go to Councillor Foley, please?
Kia ora, Your Worship, and I just want to tautoko everything that Councillor Bartley has said. I don't think I could say it any better, so I'm not going to attempt to. But I did just want to say that I support everything Councillor Bartley said, Councillor Ferry, and also Councillor Baker. I just don't think we've had enough time. I agree with having a look at our super city. We've only been around for 14 years, and I don't think, and I agree with the staff that our residents probably don't understand Auckland Council yet. But I don't think that means that we should rush into such a big decision either. And I agree with Councillor Baker that we need to spend a whole lot more time, maybe more resources, into one, educating Aucklanders about what Auckland Council is, what our governance structures are, what our local boards do, and then two, whether or not that is fit for purpose and into the future. But that's not going to happen in the next few months, so I'll also be voting against the entirety. Kia ora.
Thank you very much. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just trying to take a positive out of the last 4.5 hours on this item, and I guess the positive I have taken out of it is seems to be the rather belated recognition that the structure of the super city hasn't quite unfolded in the way that it was promised. And of course, we're a little late to the party in that respect, because right back in 2010, before the whole gig had kicked off, Professor Ian Shirley, who was the Pro-Vice-Chancellor of AUT University and a Professor of Public Policy, he made a couple of comments about the super city and about local boards. What he said about the super city more generally was, quote unquote, it ignores history, fails to connect in any meaningful way with the diverse populations and neighbourhoods of the region, and has established a corporate framework and process that will not gain the trust of ratepayers. That was his assessment before there'd been a single meeting. And as far as the local boards goes, he said, the 21 local boards proposed will be toothless. The current prescriptions for these boards and the minimal allocation of support services makes it clear that the boards will be largely irrelevant in decision making. So he kind of went on to say that, you know, the new structure for Auckland really failed to address the distinct characteristics of Auckland, its population and its potential. That was back 14 years ago, and what we've seen over the intervening period of time is that slowly, well, maybe not so slowly, but certainly unravelling. So in that respect, it's been a little ironic that when we do start with something of some substance, not a review, goodness gracious me, it's not been a review of the place with the CCOs, but there's nothing to do with the council itself. We start with the poor old local boards. And to be honest, at the outset of this, I thought, I did, you know, surprisingly, I did look at it with quite an open mind. I thought, okay, we might have an arrangement here where these new mega boards, the people might at least be full-time, they may be paid a full salary, they maybe has to be a full-time job, and in a curious way it might be better. As this has kind of gone on, I've become more convinced that it's mainly driven probably, you know, with cost savings and bureaucratic convenience, to be honest. I see very little evidence of the kind of the whole communities of interest thing under the Local Government Act. And as a practical example, I looked at what they said from my local boards. I haven't really spoken to anyone in person there, but I managed to get hold of their feedback, and they're going to be the biggest mega board, Hibiscus and Bays and Upper Harbour. And Hibiscus and Bays said there's little commonalities between us and the Upper Harbour local boards, and Upper Harbour said no significant community of interest between the Hibiscus coast and the east and the western part of our board. It takes about an hour to drive between the two locations. That's how local it is. And that's an hour on a good day with the traffic flowing. So both of the ones that are getting put together supposedly don't want it. I'm sure it's not all self-interest, because some people are interested in taking on a more full-time role. So it wasn't just patent self-interest that was driving that. So I guess, you know, it's no surprise then when it comes to this option, I say, well, you know, it's not. To go out to the Auckland public, you already know what the Auckland public's going to say. You know, that's clear at least. As far as, you know, soldiering on, it'll be a bit like the Light Brigade if you continue down this track. there's not going to be support for this. It's even more confusing. You need a kind of PhD in local government to understand all the various moves and components to subdivisions and goodness knows what. They don't even understand the local boards and the wards. They don't even understand the ward they're in, and we're going out to complicate things even more after 14 less than impressive years in terms of what Professor Shirley was alluding to. So the kindest thing here is to nip this thing in the bud, not go out and get a proper review, as someone else was saying, of the whole gig, because it does need to be reviewed, it does need to be made better, rather than soldiering on in the forlorn hope that somehow our democratic representation is just going to come right, because it's not. It's not. In fact, if you go to certain parts of Auckland, and you only have to look at the Citizens Insight Monitoring Report that comes out every quarter of 3,000 Aucklanders over the year, a margin of error of plus or minus 1.8%. The percentage in trust in council decision making currently sits at 18%, 18%.
18%.
You don't need to go and ask them what they think of the way things are panning out. They tell us every quarter, if you look at that. Citizens Insight Monitoring Report.
Walker.
The percentage may well have gone down after today, but anyway, we're probably not surveying them tomorrow. I agree with the comments of many of my fellow councillors. I really don't think that we're in a position to go out with something that the officers may have given us a good shot, but we've already heard from them that they probably don't have the capacity to do what we would ask from them. So I think really we've missed the bus here. We've really missed the bus. So I'll be voting this down. If we are looking for savings, I think there are savings that we can find from efficiencies and in particular from effectiveness across local boards, and it's the quality of their decision making that's more important than anything, because then they find savings for them. And my experience of the local boards that I've engaged with, Upper Harbour and Hibiscus and Bays and many of the others, is they do a really good job in finding savings, and that potentially saves us many, many, many millions of dollars each year. So all power to the local boards. I think we should be giving them more effect, not the upshot of this, which will be less.
Righto, well let's at least come up with something worthwhile. I've got to have an extension of time.
Happy to,
oh, good. Moved and seconded. I oppose an extension of time personally.
Who's seconding? Who's going to second it?
Who's seconding an extension? No, you proposed it. You can't propose and second. Just give me a lecture about being good at local government. Right, all those in favour? Opposed? Aye. Williamson.
Oh, that's going to be...
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm a bit like Councillor Bartley and very close to tears, because I think I've spent the last 4.5 hours, if that's what John Watson's estimating, it seems like a lot longer, on something that I don't quite understand. We had a joint governance working party. I thought I heard at the very beginning it was passed quite a close vote of 7-5 to bring this to us. And yet I don't think I've heard anybody yet speak in favour other than Deputy Mayor. So I'd really like to hear from the 7 who voted to send this to us, that we could then consider it, rather than voting to send something to us and then not supporting it. That just doesn't make sense. It'd have been better to vote no, and we wouldn't have wasted the last, whatever, 4.5 hours. So could we please just hear from some of the Joint Governance Working Party people who voted for this? Because it looks like it's going to be lost by, well, so far it looks like Councillor, the Deputy Mayor, myself, and maybe the only 2 that will be voting this way.
Well, had it been 5-7 the other way, we probably would be voting in favour of it. But Councillor Hill, I don't know where those other 7 people are, because they're not all members of the council. Councillor Hills. And
no, it was largely just to say I came here pretty On the fence, one of the local boards in my ward is extremely opposed and one of the local boards is extremely in favour. But I was just going to say, it is a shame that this is the first time we have really discussed this as a group, because it is an overwhelming majority that have spoken against. So right now, it would have been better to take it off the table and we had a good discussion together to understand what we were all thinking before we not wasted, but it's been 2.5 hours, but it has felt like 4.5 hours. But yeah, so I obviously, doesn't matter where I'm thinking because an overwhelming number have voted for it. It's just a shame we didn't get a chance to discuss this prior to this meeting. Thanks.
Well, they did have a joint working party that you could have discussed it with. Councillor Leone.
Yeah, just to say that, yes, I am a member of the Joint Governance Working Group and party and agreed to bring it here. But I think, you know, it's always our role to keep an open mind right until it comes up to the governing body. So obviously what I have heard today, I am actually really concerned about a number of issues, including B, which I've already highlighted. And so I also won't be supporting this today. And I do believe that there will need to be some more work on it. I just want to also support the comments that were made by Councillor Bartley around diversity, because we know, and this was something that I did bring up in the debates that we had in the working group, was that we know that it's so difficult to get diversity onto our local boards. And so that has always been one of my huge and significant concerns. As you've said, Councillor Bartley's the first Pacifica woman to be a councillor. We've got the first Tongan chair of the local board there. You know, I'm the first Wahine Māori to be a councillor. And then I know that we have a number of chairs that Wahine Māori or Māori chairs, that it's the first time that they have been in those roles. And if we continue to go down that path without actually having some kind of system in place which encourages diversity representation, which I don't think we've been able to achieve through this, to be fair. I think that, yes, we've reviewed it, we've looked at an alternative option because we felt we had to, because of a very specific time frame that we were told that we had. But as a council, I don't think we're doing a good enough job at actually making sure that our local boards on a long-term basis actually ensures that we have the representation that's required in our communities. And so that's another piece of work that I have clearly voiced ongoing. I mean, it's definitely not something that I'm just mentioning for the first time today. We, you know, Māori wards at a local board level hasn't been discussed because we know that it's not likely to have support around this governing body, which is a shame. We're in 2024, we've had a massive protest outside. We've got more than enough Māori living in the city that should be on every single local board. We should have Māori representation. But again, that wasn't included or looked at. You know, Māori have got all of the degrees and all of the masters in the world now to be able to have the skills to be able to be represented in the city. But again, it's not even looked at. Anyway, so those are just a few of my comments, which, as I say, I did bring up in the Joint Governance Working Group as well. So I won't be supporting this today. Kia ora.
Can we have 5 minutes before you vote on this? I move the question be put.
Sandra with an R has asked for a 5-minute break before we vote on this. We've rushed it a bit now. We've only gone 2 hours on this. We're trying to see if we might be able to get a... And
point of order, Your Worship.
5 minutes there for those
The
people
question
who
be
need to
put.
go to the loo.
No,
eh?
you can't. I mean, the order of precedence is that a closure motion will now be put right now. You can't just adjourn.
Your Worship, I was just putting that, we can agree to it and then adjourn for 5 minutes before we take the vote if you wish, but you have to.
I don't know what we're having the 5-minute break for.
No. So that's why I want the question to be put.
Councillor Fletcher has moved a procedural motion. It's been seconded by Councillor Lee. You must put it to the vote, and the motion is to put the matter under debate to the vote.
Okay,
So-
are we going to put this under the debate or are we going to wait 5 minutes?
Councillor
It
Fletcher
was foreshadowed by
procedural.
councillor Philippina that he wanted a division.
No. So can I just clarify, please? We have to vote first on Councillor Fletcher's procedural motion. So put that and go on.
Right, all those in
Aye.
favour of councillor Fletcher's procedural motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
No. Can you please record? It's actually, we're talking about democracy here and now we're shutting down the debate. It's amazing.
This has not been a great day for democracy, frankly. I think I had enough yeses that we are going to put the bloody thing, so I take that as being supported with 1 or 2. Righto, the next one is we're going to agree on the first part of this. We want to go ahead and ask the public what they think about this, which is A. All those in favour?
Wait.
What?
The division was
Councillor
called.
Lee has called a division. Just to be clear, Councillor Philippina asked for a division and then he withdrew that request, but we now have a request
Yep.
for a division from Councillor Lee.
You want a division on this,
Okay.
councillor Lee? There we are. You've been overruled, councillor. Whoever that was.
Right, councillors, you are voting on clause A. Councillor Baker.
Against.
Councillor Bartley.
No, I think the public's been wound up enough.
Councillor Dalton.
Against.
Councillor Darby.
No.
Councillor Ferry.
Against.
Councillor Philippina.
Against.
Councillor Fletcher.
No.
Councillor Foley.
Against.
Councillor Henderson.
No.
Councillor Hills.
No.
Councillor Lee.
No.
Councillor Leone.
Carl, no.
Councillor Newman.
I'm going to go with the crowd and say no.
Councillor Sayers.
For.
Deputy Mayor Simpson. Councillor Stewart.
Definitely for.
Councillor Turner.
Against.
Councillor Walker.
No.
Councillor Watson.
No.
Councillor Williamson.
For.
Mayor Brown.
Oh, 4.
So that is lost.
That's all right then. That's good.
16 votes to 5.
Bad luck, public. We don't want to know.
So now you have to put clause B.
Clause B, I take it that... do you want a division on clause B, Mr Lee, or do you think you might have the numbers without having to go to this?
Vote. You can just put it to the vote. We haven't had a request for a division.
Okay, all those in favour of B, please say aye. Aye. All those against, please say no.
No.
Hey, after only several hours, we've decided that we're not going to talk to the public. Thank you for that. Now we'll have 5 minutes. And we're going to get on to something really important next time, which is the local board.
Point of order, sorry, can we just clarify what happens with the foreshadowed? I'm quite happy for us to take a break before the foreshadowed. So should we take the break anyway? Yeah. Okay.
5 minute
You
break.
could include that in the next one. I think it might be better because technically it's been voted down, so we can't do it.